about this is that you see Solomon anointed and proclaimed king. Now, it wasn't the next son in line, it was Solomon. And what's intriguing and beautiful in this moment is that Solomon came from something in David's life that was the biggest scandal of his life. It was a moment where he was committing adultery and then murdered a man so that he could be with his wife. And so God chose to use Solomon through this, someone who many could look at and say, oh, nothing good can come from such brokenness. But yet, what did God do? I want to encourage you too, because you can see throughout Scripture that God uses many people who are unexpected, or maybe in the world's eyes, why would God use them, right? So we think about Abraham. He was an old man, but what did God accomplish through him? We think about Elijah, who was depressed, and yet look at how he was able to live life fully through God and be used by God. You look at Moses, who had a speech problem, a stutter. How could God use my lips? How could God use my voice? But yet God called him. You look at Gideon, who was afraid, and yet God used him as a mighty warrior. And Rahab, who was a prostitute. Samaritan woman, who was divorced and living in sin, yet God still used her and radically changed her life. You see David, who committed adultery, who murdered someone so that he could hide his sin, and yet look at what God did through him. You see the disciples and each an individual life that they carried on, but even some of them had moments of weakness, and yet look what God could do through them. And you see Paul, who was a Pharisee who persecuted and killed Christians. He went after them. He sought them out to destroy their lives. And yet God called him, opened his eyes, and used him in radical ways. You know, oftentimes we find ourselves in situations where God might be calling you to do something, and you start to second guess, oh God, why would you ask me to do that? I'm unworthy. I'm not good enough. I can't sing good enough. I can't play good enough. I can't speak words in a good, educated way. I don't understand things. I get timid in front of it. Doesn't matter. Listen, God is calling you. He's calling you, and he's going to get you through it. And he's going to use you in mighty ways. So be encouraged by that. Take that step out in boldness and believe that when God is asking you to do something, that he's going to do beautiful and amazing things, and that you could be that vessel for him. I'm going to read one scripture verse with you also, just to have you guys think about this for the rest of the evening and pray about it and hopefully be challenged by it. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 26 through 29, it says, brothers and sisters, consider your calling. Not many were wise from a human perspective, not many powerful, not many of noble birth. Instead, God has chosen what is foolish in the world to shame the wise, and God has chosen what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God has chosen what is insignificant and despised in the world, what is viewed as nothing, to bring to nothing that which is viewed as something, so that we, or no one, may boast in his presence. It's important to remember that sometimes we may feel like we're not going to be good enough. But if God is calling you, he will sustain you. He will lift you up. He will provide what you need to do his will, and you can do great things in his name. He is worthy of that. I hope that you can be encouraged by that. And if he's asking you to step out, that you'll take this time to be bold and to step out.